So there comes a time in every man's life when he realizes that he needs some handsaws. So this is what I've found to be the best way to acquire a bunch of handsaws. First off, go on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and buy just a lot, you know, as in like several saws at the same time, of just kind of crapola looking saws. Like this guy here, this is the handle for it. It's missing 2 screws, and yeah, these are all rusty, the handles. Yeah, this guy here, handle's all busted, but look at how ornate and beautiful that handle is. It's a nice saw. It just needs a little bit of love. So, step 1, first thing you're going to do is take your sander, orbital sander, and sand down the blade. So, knock off most of the rust. Doesn't have to be perfectly clean. I mean, you just want to get off the rough stuff and get it down to a finish sort of like this. Next step we're going to do, take the handle. Go ahead and sand this guy down. Remove all the old finish, so this has got to go a little bit more. Now you may have noticed that although I got all the finish off, well, most of the finish, I left it kind of dirty and rough looking. That's because this is a old saw. I'd guess maybe, I don't know, 80, 90 years old. So, you know, you want to keep some of that patina. I mean, it is going to be made into a fully functional tool that will last me, outlast my life, outlast my children's life. But I want to keep some of that patina, keep it looking, you know, kind of neat, kind of vintage. But you do you, you know. You want to sand it all off? Eh, fuck it. Do what you want. Okay, so this is the stain I have on hand. It's a light walnut. And we're just going to rub it on this guy here. Pro tip, any cotton fabric will work. This is actually an old pair of boxers. You wash them first, but after you wash them, you know, they already got a hole in them, so, you know, use them as an old rag. So, you know, just a little dippy poo. And start rubbing. Oh yeah, that's going to look good. That's right. Work it in there. Don't be shy. You know, you want to, this is one of those cases where more is better, you know. Let the wood soak it all up. And hopefully, it'll actually close up these cracks a little bit as it absorbs it and the wood expands. So, yeah, let's get this guy all stained. Ooh, mama. That's a nice looking handle. Now, most people would stop right around here, rub a little bit of beeswax or boiled linseed oil into it, and then you could just use it like that. But personally, I like to spray this stuff on it. It's crystal clear enamel, dries really hard. It'll prevent the wood from drying out because it seals it, and then also makes it easier to clean because it gets a nice gloss non-stick coating. Ooh boy, that's the good stuff right there. Let that guy dry. In the meantime, let's work on the blade. So, squirt a little bit of oil on it, taking the same old torn up undies that I used for the stain. We're like the Native Americans here. We like to use everything until it can't be used any further. We're just gonna take this guy and just kind of rub it in, just like that. Okay, all nice and rubbed down, both front and back. Now the reason why I do this is because there's a thin coating of rust on it, which isn't really a huge issue for these saws. It actually kind of protects it because it forms like a iron oxide layer, you know, sort of like what you have on aluminum, like aluminum oxide and whatnot. But anywho, the oil just sort of prevents it from oxidizing any further, protects it from, you know, any moisture in the air and whatnot. And you're not getting it like completely soaked in oil. I mean, it's a little glossy, but if I touch it with my hands, I'm not going to get, my fingers don't get oily on it. So it's just enough to where it's soaked into the pores of the steel. Okay, the next fun part is this saw has been kind of kicked around and whatnot. I don't know how well that's coming out, but it's pretty dull. So the way to sharpen this guy up, all you need is a triangle file. Notice this one's broken off. But don't throw out files just because they're broken off, because the rest of the file is still good. So, what we're going to do is we're going to come in at an angle, and you go all the way down the saw blade, and that gets you one side of it. Let's see if I could show you. And you take the file, and it fits in just like that. So, we'll work down one end, and you're basically just going to, you see a shininess on the leading edge and a nice point, and that'll get it nice and sharp. It'll sail right through any piece of wood. And after we get it all nice and sharpened up, we'll go through with a saw set the kerf, and yeah, this sucker's ready to go. We'll see if this comes out. You'll notice that these ones that I just filed have got a nice shine to them and a nice edge. And you could tell where I haven't filed yet because they're dull. Now if you look on the other side, if it'll focus, you can see that it's also dull. So as soon as I get to the end, flip the saw around and go and get the other side. And that's basically how you do it. Takes a couple minutes, usually nice to put on some music and then just have at it. Well, the video isn't necessarily doing it justice, but this sucker's pretty wicked sharp. I mean, you could feel it when you put your fingers on it, just trying to grab into your flesh and tear it. So yeah, this guy's just gonna soar through wood like a hot knife through butter. Okay, so saw's nice and sharp. The final thing to do is to set the teeth using a sawtooth setter, and that basically defines the kerf, or the sort of how wide the cut is, and that'll also determine how fine and how clean the cut is. And this is usually adjusted depending on the wood you're using. So if you're using, like, I don't know, say a wetter wood or a softer wood, you might have a wider kerf, versus hardwoods you can have a smaller kerf, because it's the wood's not gonna swell and close in on the joint as much. And that's why, you know, like yard tools have got a really wide kerf usually, because the wood's so green it'll actually close the cut on the blade and bind up. So this guy works pretty simply. You just see if I can do this with one hand. You just drop it on down in there. I don't know if you can see that. You get it lined up on one of the teeth, if I could do that. And once it's lined up, you just squeeze this handle and it pushes forward this lever, and that bends the sawtooth over a set amount, and you just sit there and go tooth by tooth all the way down one end, and then hop over to the other side and get the other end. And there we go. Got a very beautiful looking saw ready to go. Nice sharp teeth. I'll find a piece of wood around here and we'll try cutting it. But yeah, pretty happy with how that came out. Barely even recognize it's the same saw. And this guy should last a long while now. Okay, bear with me as I try and do this one-handed. Got the saw here. This is a piece of pressure-treated 2x4. And we're going to do this one-handed. I got a fairly fine kerf set on it. Oop, there we go, come on. I'm not going to cut all the way through it because I don't have a whole lot of control. But as you can see, that's a pretty decent cut. Sailed through there pretty nice.